The mayor is joining now, and you have a quorum. So whenever
All right.
you're ready.
All right, great. Let's call a meeting to order, and I'm going to ask Councilmember Greg to come up with a few words, please.
Councilmember Greg, you said?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I did say Greg.
I'm not even on the committee, but I'm happy to do it.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Okay, I'm gonna have to go to Councilmember Bowden. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. Let's do a moment of silence. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember. Approval of the September 26 minutes. The motion.
So
Move for approval.
Move for approval, second by Councilmember Bowden. Any questions on those minutes? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Mr. O'Brien, item E, acceptance and dedication of rights of way.
Afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Our first item is some items that will be in the SCDOT right of way in conjunction with the West Ashley Bikeway Greenway Connector Trail. This is something we've been working with the Parks Department, Chase Anderson, and we would recommend for the right to tell DOT that we will accept the maintenance of those items.
Okay, Councilmember Pell, do you have a motion?
I will move to approve.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded by the mayor. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to confirm that, Tom, this is the new sidewalk that's going to be constructed from the Greenway up to Wapu Road.
Yes, sir, that's correct, Mr. Mayor. 890 linear feet of sidewalk.
Okay, great.
Yes, sir.
Do you know anything about the time frame for that project to proceed?
I'll check with Chase. I don't see him on the call, but it's his project. And I've been working with him on that. I'll find out and get you an email tomorrow. Okay.
Great. Terrific. Been waiting for this for a little while.
Well, I'd appreciate an update on that one as well. Thank y'all.
Yes, sir. I'll get that to Councilman Rappel.
Okay, item E2, Mr. O'Brien.
Yes, sir. This is a sidewalk infill project on East Bay Street near Charlotte Street that the county is going to do for us, and it's going to be a nice little project to get some connectivity. So this is on the west side of East Bay, kind of near where the I guess it's that law firm. The name of it's escaping me now, but it's going to be infill of sidewalk and granite curb right there, and we recommend that we will accept that maintenance also.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the committee?
What street is it near, Tom?
Mayor, you know, right near it's just north of Calhoun, the intersection of Calhoun on the west side. Once you get past the hotel, and I don't think, is it Charlotte Street? Is the next street up? I can't remember.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. It's past Charlotte Street, so it'll be infill north of Charlotte Street.
Will they repair where that big buckle in the sidewalk is, where the tree, there's an oak tree that's pushed the sidewalk all up?
You talking about on the east side over there?
No, it's on the west side.
We did the one on the east side. I'll check on the west side and see if that's part of it. If not, I'll get Matt in to look at it, and we'll get with Urban Forestry and see what we can do on that, making in conjunction with this project.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions on item E2? Do we have a motion on this yet?
No, sir.
Move for
We do?
approval.
All right. Properly moved and seconded by who? Councilman Shea, didn't you second the motion?
You know how I feel about these motions, Mr. Councilman Waring, about sidewalk maintenance.
You're right.
Now we take over from the state. I mean,
Yeah. Well, at least we're getting granted.
I'll, in the spirit of cooperation, I'll second the motion this time.
Thank you, sir. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Thanks. Item E3, 1313 L Street.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ask on this item here also some support from Matt Fountain and Magali from the legal department. This is a situation where a gentleman, Dan Carroll on L Street, was trying to sell his house, and he found out that the house is unfortunately built in the city drainage easement, and it's causing him issues with the sale. He can't get clear title, and we've turned over, obviously, anytime we have a situation where stormwater is affected, we've asked Matt, and Matt, you want to say a few words about what the position of the department is, and then Magley, I think you've got some information for us on maybe a solution.
Mr. Chairman, is that all right?
Oh, yes, sir. Mr. Fountain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And yes, Mr. Bryan, we did take a look at the survey that was done for the property. The edge of the home is sitting about 3 feet from the edge of the pipe. The pipe is 5 or 6 feet deep in this location. It's a stormwater pipe that drains the road basically backwards through between two lots, across another road, and then between some more lots into a stormwater pond. Unfortunately, due to the depth of the pipe and the proximity to the foundation of the home, we feel it's too close to the home to be able to adjust that easement. We did look at whether there were options to relocate the pipe. Unfortunately, the home on the other side is very close to the edge of the easement, which is only a 10-foot wide easement on the other side. So there's not really movement to shift that pipe to the other side. So we did look at some options with the legal department, which Magley may want to, or Ms. Creech may want to touch on, but we would not be comfortable with the liability to the city without some kind of protection or provision similar to what's included within a drainage easement as we have today.
Exactly, to Matt's point, to address that. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, you can speak up a little bit, please.
Okay, thank you. So we were looking at one way to possibly handle this was through an encroachment agreement, which would basically allow the homeowner improvement there to encroach on our stormwater drainage easement and have that standard language that we have in the other easements regarding liability, et cetera, on this for the city to make sure that that's set forth in the agreement and that would inure to the benefit of future successors entitled to the property.
Okay, any comments?
So,
Any members?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
if
sir.
we just taking the scenario out, who knows when or if, so the pipe may need to be repaired or replaced even. What would be, if we did the encroachment route, what would happen, so to speak, under that, if you had to replace the pipe?
In that scenario, we would be able to, under the proposed language of this encroachment agreement, access it, make the necessary repairs, and that would all be with the any costs associated, et cetera, to be reimbursed by the homeowner, and that we would not be responsible for any improvements to the property that are torn down or would need to be rebuilt.
Right. So I'm sure we would try to replace the pipe without causing any damage to their foundation, but if it might not be feasible and it might not be possible since it's so close. So, and so if we had to remove part of the foundation or literally part of that corner of the house, would that be on the city or that would be on the homeowner?
Any cost to remove the improvements that are essentially the encroachment in order to access the stormwater drainage would be at the homeowner's expense.
Okay, thank you.
It encroaches upon the easement.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question. Mr. Fountain, how large you said that pipe is?
I believe it's an 18-inch pipe, but I've double checked, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any other questions from first, let me see if any other committee members have questions.
Sure.
Hearing none. Mr. David, I don't want to mispronounce your last name.
Sure. I'm David Paglorini. Thank you. I'm the attorney. I'm here with Mr. Carroll, who's the homeowner.
Okay.
So this error, we believe, by a combination, the plan was approved almost 20 years ago by the city. Mr. Carroll's, through no fault of his own. And to the mayor's point, we would prefer a partial release of the easement. Obviously, your engineers and technical people are telling you that is unlikely or problematic. And here we are with the encroachment permit. At a minimum, the minimum, so Mr. Carroll and his wife can have title to the property, sell it. They are retired. We believe that that is an appropriate outcome. And Mr. Carroll and his wife and any future homeowners bear responsibility. He's gone through great expense to hire a professional surveyor. We don't believe the pipe is as close as maybe what staff does, but that is a minor disagreement. And again, we believe that the encroachment permit would be sufficient. And Mr. Carroll's here if y'all have any questions.
Well, I mean, you agree with the suggestion of our staff. Seems reasonable to me. Don't everybody speak at once?
Real quick.
Mr. McDonald, yes, sir.
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, sir. I also represent Mr. Carroll and along with Mr. Pagliarini. Mr. Carroll did not even realize that he had this drainage easement that ran so close to his house until he went to put his house for sale earlier this year. That sale fell through because of the drainage easement. And then the second price, that is a reduced price at the sale, is now pending. We would ask for a partial abandonment of the drainage easement. If that isn't granted, then we would ask for the encroachment permit or easement that the city attorney had mentioned.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
of course, it's their choice up until closing, I guess, but has the buyer indicated that they would accept the encroachment permit and move to the closing?
Mr. Mayor, we've been attempting to get a specific answer on that. I don't intend to quibble. We believe they will.
Okay.
We understand they will, but that's why we're asking for the release, because there's no guarantee.
Right. Understood.
All right.
And I have not yet had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Pagliarini or Mr. McDonald. But I'll be happy to circle back with staff and then have a follow-up discussion with them. But my understanding was that even a partial abandonment was not feasible, but we will look into that and discuss that some more, and I'll be happy to send a proposed agreement in some way, shape, or form, depending on what the results of that discussion.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And from a timing standpoint, certainly y'all's decision, but if the objective, which it is for the Carrolls, is to move forward immediately, the minimum encroachment permit for today would do, and we would certainly appreciate it if we could leave the door open for partial release. That would certainly help the Carrolls. They're moving into a retirement community, and they need to get out of this house and sell it. So.
All right. Well, you heard the advice from our staff. Also heard about a partial door being open, but we can move forward today with certainly staff recommendation with a motion. What's the pleasure of the committee?
So move.
Second.
Hey, those seconds are getting hard to get out there, man.
So
any more discussion?
If time is of the essence, could we have the motion state that y'all empower the mayor to go ahead and sign the encroachment permit as proposed by staff without it having to come back to council again? Is that okay with everybody?
Councilman Shea, do you want to amend your motion?
I amend as the mayor stated.
Yeah.
Sure, the second goes along with that. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Good luck with it.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Item F1, 17 temporary encroachments. Mr. O'Brien, anything that, instead of going through, anything that stands out as being unusual?
No, sir. These are standard encroachments. They've all been inspected and all proper approvals through the city process, be it BAR or just engineering inspection, have been done. And we're just offering as information to the committee, but we've offered for approval of all of them.
Okay. Thank you. Public service update, G1. Mr.
Yes,
Fountain?
sir. Environmental services update.
Oh,
Since our
Mr.
last
Bryan, okay,
meeting,
good.
since our last meeting, we is all had a little visitor named Ian visit. So I'd like to report that our garbage collection has been on time for the last 2 weeks. Debris, we've been pretty heavy for the last 2 weeks collecting debris. As a matter of fact, it wasn't until this weekend that our crews haven't worked. They didn't work Sunday of this week. It's the first day they've had off. So we were happy to do that. And one thing we're doing this week is we're starting on the back of routes. We're running our normal routes, but we're starting on the back of routes because people who maybe had a delay in getting service the week before, this will allow them to maybe get some stuff picked up. So Matt and his team are all there working very hard to pick up the debris. There's a good bit of stuff out there. And Matt, do you want to just briefly touch on what's going on about potential big contracts, or do you want to wait on that?
So we're still in discussion. Me and Amy's had some conversations. We've got 3 potential contractors that we're looking into for help, but nothing has been finalized on those yet.
Any more input?
Glad to answer any questions that you or the committee may have.
Councilman Shea?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Matt, I haven't been bugging you or Tom, but so how far behind do you think, just so our constituents know? I think that's sort of the main thing is no one's complained to me at all, but how far out do you think that y'all are? Ballpark figure.
So we're making progress. So I can tell you for Monday's routes, we should have most of those wrapped up today as far as the yard debris. And that's, you know, the Monday routes. The bulk items, there's still some of that out there. So we're working on trying to get that up too. But that is supposed to resume next week. I would say we probably have another week, this week and next week, before we get most of the brush done.
Okay. And like I said, I think mainly it's just keeping people abreast of what's going on, and when they can expect that. That's all.
Yeah, I agree. All right,
Y'all
Mr.
do a
Bryan.
great job, by the way. So just keep up what y'all are doing.
I agree. Mr. Bryan, G2?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ask Ms. Creech. This is something that Julia Copeland asked us to do. And Magley, I know that they just asked for consideration to waive the building and permit fees for associated with the Emmanuel Memorial. If you've got any additional information on that, you'd like to share with the committee?
I'm sorry, would you mind repeating that last part? My Zoom broke up.
This is the request for to waive the building and permit fees for the Emmanuel Memorial, and Julia had put that before the committee. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, nothing to add to that. That's correct.
Okay, just FYI, Ms. Creech, you're coming through kind of muffled, but anyway.
Yeah, I'll just add, if I may, Mr. Chairman, that we had this request. I know council has been very generous in help with another cash commitment, but as they presented to us, they're still raising funds, and so every dollar, every penny matters in them getting this amazing memorial done. And so, yeah, it's another request of it, but you know, do we need to make a building permit fee off the Mother Emanuel Memorial? We would kindly ask y'all to approve a waiver on this one.
I don't think you need to ask, Mayor. I think that should be automatic, quite frankly.
So moved.
Properly moved by the mayor and seconded by Councilman Shahid. Any more discussions on this? You know, it just brings a curiosity, not on this, but did we pay a building permit fee on the Gill Yard? I hope not. $142 million project? I sure hope not.
We did, Councilmember Waring, and I think we've had this, if you don't mind me speaking, I'm sorry.
Sure.
I think we've had this request before to waive fees, and we've not waived the fees. We've just increased the contribution amount in some way so that the fees were still there. That might be something else that we could consider.
Well, yeah, to make a wash. Okay. But seriously, why would we, and I understand this isn't technically a city project, but on something like the Gill Yard, why would the city pay a building permit fee on a $142 million project? I mean,
Well, we don't exempt ourselves from our own regulations and fees, I think generally, legally speaking. So when this request came forward, I asked and they said, our building department responded that the only way to actually waive a building permit fee was to get the consent of council.
going back to precedents, I think I'll go back to Ms. Wharton suggested, maybe we just gross up the contribution to, this is just discussion, whatever that permit fee would be. I guess we'll leave the fee in place and then gross up the donation to cover that permit fee.
Mr. Chairman,
And that way
we'll
we're not giving ourselves special treatment in any way. That, I think that's why we did it before. So I could do that without a problem.
Yes, I suggest that we proceed as Ms. Wharton has proposed.
Okay.
I couldn't hear Magali.
She just thought we should do it that way, Mayor, by still charging the fee, but then we could just increase our contribution amount.
Right.
And that way the fee is there if for whatever reason that we charge the fee, but it wasn't a waiver of the fee.
But I still think if we're gonna do that, I think we should get a motion on that. And
Absolutely. No, either way. And honestly, six of one, half dozen the other to me.
right. So what's the pleasure on the motion on that?
I think I made the motion, so I'll restate the motion that we adjust our contribution to the Mother Manual Memorial to include enough additional to pay the building permit fees that are required by the city. Does that do it?
That'll do it. Councilman Shea, you seconded. You accept that amendment?
I accept that amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any more discussion on that item? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And Ms. Wharton, thank you for your timely input. H1, Mr. Fountain.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is for the Medical District Tunnel Extension at Earhart project. It's recommended approval of an MOA with Charleston Water Systems, basically for them to provide in-contract utility funding of 100% of the costs of the sanitary sewer work. It's about $370,000. You'll note this one is being brought after, obviously, we brought the Earhart contract. The Charleston Water Systems was negotiating a little bit of additional work with the contractor for some of the sewer work they were looking to do in the area. They finished that negotiation. They've asked us to finalize this amount with our council, and then it'll be brought to the CWS board for final approval. So again, $370,000 basically towards the existing contract with the Earhart Street contractor.
All right. Sounds like a no-brainer to me. Motion?
So move.
Second.
Okay.
Properly moved in second. Any more discussion on that Earhart extension? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. H2, Windermere Drainage Project.
Yeah, thank you.
The rest of us, Mr. Fountain, want to hear this. I'm gonna exempt Councilmember Pell from this discussion. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is recommended approval of our fee amendment number 1. It's to basically progress the project beyond the conceptual engineering that we've completed into now the recommended design and permitting services based on the conceptual engineering work we did. So that takes us all the way through construction drawings and final permitting work. This is with Thomas & Hutton, who's the engineer on the project, and the amount of $567,300. If we include all the optional services, there are a couple of optional services we don't expect to use, but they're in there in case we needed them for some real estate acquisition support if necessary, and some coordination with CWS. This funding is available in the existing drainage fund allocation. This project also is the project that we received a state earmark with a lot of work from Representative Sabernakis of $1.5 million. So we'll be using some of that state earmark money towards these services as well. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer this.
Be good to share that information when we do bring that to council tomorrow night, Mr. Fountain, anticipation of the state. There's a motion out there on.
I would like to move that we approve this item, Council.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, probably moved and seconded. Any more input on that?
Just,
Yes,
real
sir,
quick.
Mr. Pell.
He can't keep quiet on this thing. Come on.
I mean, you know, I've been so quiet already this whole meeting. I just want to thank everybody that's been involved in this, from day one. You know, the 1984, Davis and Floyd study that was prepared the year I was born, identified the fact that Old Windermere did not drain. I think the drainage capacity was something like 10% or 15% of what it should be, and essentially nothing's been done since then until this represents the most significant drainage improvement for not just Old Windermere, but parts of South Windermere as well, and the shopping center. And we've done a tremendous amount of work in District 11 over the last several years, but as we saw with Ian most recently, that's a tough spot over there. And this is the relief that's on the way to help these folks. And a lot of work's been done already. Matt's been doing an excellent job. The Old Windermere Neighborhood Association's been very active and engaged in this throughout. We appreciate everything the mayor's done, this committee has done as well. And I just encourage my colleagues to help us take the next step forward in this important process. And we continue to make it happen over in this part of West Ashley. And yeah, and as Councilman Waring alluded to, we've had our state legislative delegation involved in this as well, both on the funding side of things, but also on the permitting side of things to really help. It's been a great team effort, and I just can't tell you how excited I am to see this day. We're actually moving this forward in a significant manner. So with all that said, I would urge my colleagues to support this project, and I'll support the one that's coming your neck of the woods, obviously, as well. Thank you.
All right. Good comments. Any other input?
So,
Yes, sir, Mr.
Chairman,
Mayor.
just to manage expectations, Matt, how long do you think the design engineering portion will now run before we would get to being able to bid out for construction?
That's a good question, Mayor. So this is the planned pathway forward. We still have some coordination and outreach meetings with the Old Windermere Neighborhood Association and the South Windermere Neighborhood Association. So there will be a little bit of adjustment or tweaking to the final layout of plans. But generally, we would expect to see about 2 years. There's a new outfall that would be necessary, which will require an individual permit from the Army Corps of Engineers. We've been working with the Charleston County School District, who's been very supportive of some property being transferred in an easement capacity to the city for the outfall. And then the portion of the work is within the greenway itself, which is in this area extremely full of CWS significant infrastructure. So it is a challenging project. There's also a DOT component on William Ackerman. So it's probably 2 years before we'd be ready to go to construction, but that's part of the reason we need to get started, is so that we're sitting here in 2 years saying it's a good thing we got going and there's improvement being made. We do second to that, and I certainly don't want to ever steal Councilman Fell's thunder, but we have been working through the outfall cleaning in this area as a short-term measure. So we did receive those permits. We did complete the bid process. We are reviewing our contractor submissions and expect to see potentially at next council meeting a recommendation for award on that. So we're again continuing the short-term projects in this area as well as that long-term project, but likely 2 years for the major improvements to get into construction.
Thank you, and that's fine. I just wanted everybody to kind of be aware of what reality was from a timeline. Thank you.
Mr. Fountain, relative to the outfall cleaning, is that going to clean, anything underneath the greenway?
So this outfall cleaning, Mr. Chairman, is actually coming under Folly Road, just to the south of the Windermere Shopping Center, going then out under William Ackerman and the rest of the way out. So it's
okay.
It does drain a little bit of the greenway kind of on the far side of Folly Road from the traditional part of the greenway we think about, but it's primarily the neighborhoods draining into this area and Folly Road itself rather than the greenway section.
Okay, all right, thank you. Just curious. Call a question. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Ayes have it. That's great teamwork. All the way around on it. Kudos. Stormwater management, item H3, stormwater management staffing plans. This is a carryover, and I appreciate Mr. Fountain for responding in such a timely fashion from our last city council meeting when we were discussing about jobs not being filled, the money already being budgeted, and possibly having a little bit more flexibility with the that the department head can maybe exercise and show some flexibility to move those unfilled areas forward. Mr. Fountain.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I did prepare a very brief presentation. I'll share my screen.
I want to thank you for doing that because we only had a hurricane and all in between. So thanks.
It's been a very busy couple of weeks. Yes, thank you. I'll try to move through this pretty quickly, as I think you're all relatively familiar with the situation already. But again, just a brief update here. I kind of split the department into two sections for purposes of this discussion: our field operations section and then our engineering and MS4 permitting section. So for the field operations section, currently on the left, you can see kind of the work that our field operations crews do. So obviously we hand clean ditches. There's a lot of vegetative cutback and debris removal at the moment. We're again somewhat limited on staff, so we sort of focus on the biggest bang for your buck returns. With additional staff, we would like, and you can see what's on the right in blue is what we would like to be doing. We'd like to be able to get in and do rehabilitation of those hand clean ditches, basically actually digging them out a little bit and making them a little bit more resilient rather than just sort of spot maintenance on them. Moving into machine clean ditches and canals, these are our larger systems and our roadside systems. Again, we currently focus on vegetative cutback, debris removal, and we've been rehabilitating our roadside drainage system over the last 3 years. We're on schedule to finish that in about 2 more years. On the right, we would like to get into more outfall maintenance work, in addition to kind of the heavier work that we're currently doing in those systems. We've all talked about the outfalls, I think, thoroughly, so I won't go into that in more detail unless anyone has any questions, but we'd certainly like to increase how much of that we're doing. The pipe systems, we currently focus our efforts on catch basin cleaning and then basically blockage removal when there's a known flooding issue. We're still pretty reactive based on the capacity we've got for vector truck operations. We'd like to be able to do more rehabilitation, more active, proactive cleaning. And then construction, our construction crew is really down to just doing pipe and catch basin repair work. We'd obviously like to be doing installation work, restoring some of these rear yard ditches and swales that we see, also working through installing new pipes and basins in some areas we see erosion or see opportunities for drainage improvement. Just for perspective, kind of here's just a kind of hopefully easy to follow diagram. So focusing in on the hand clean crews. Again, we're currently doing about once every 2 years, getting through vegetative cutback and debris removal on the hand clean systems. We'd like to be doing that on at least an annual basis and doing that rehabilitation program at least every 5 years, where we're coming through and really cleaning out every ditch over a 5-year period back to like full functionality, not just doing the quick kind of spot removals. So our current staffing, and this is my pictograph format, our current staffing is basically 2 hand clean crews as of this week. We're budgeted to have about 5 crews. We'd like to shift to a system where we have 4 hand clean crews and then 1 of those more rehabilitation oriented crews for the hand clean ditches, where we're able to go through and actually dig out with some smaller equipment where possible, or with kind of enhanced hand clean activity where it's not possible to fit equipment. For machine clean work, again, we're currently working through every 3 years or so with the front yard ditches being rehabilitated currently on a 5-year system. We'd like to be able to get to these systems at least on an annual basis, continue that 5-year rehabilitation work. We're currently running basically 1 roadside ditch maintenance crew and 1 canal maintenance crew, which is what I'm showing with the pictographs there. We'd like to be getting towards more like 2 roadside maintenance crews, 1, again, heavy canal crew, and then 1 crew working on the more difficult, we're picturing a walking excavator there, the more difficult canals and ditches with some specialized equipment. We'd like to follow that through basically with the potential staffing shows that same general distribution of workforce versus, again, the 2 crews that we're currently running. And just for clarity, hopefully those titles are straightforward, but the current staffing is the physical bodies that we have in place, where the budgeted staffing is what the the budget would say that we could have in place under our current budget. And potential staffing would be if we did some reworking of pay grades and some reworking of the progression system, what we think we could get to realistically. Pipe work. So again, I mislabeled those terribly. I apologize for that, but we're currently working through, if you go back to the original slide, we're reworking through currently acute cleaning, blockage cleaning, and we're doing catch basin work where we get through catch basins probably once every 2 to 3 years for cleaning. Potentially, we'd like to get to where we're doing, again, catch basin cleaning on an annual basis, still removing acute blockages, and then also doing some proactive pipe rehabilitation, as well as outfall cleaning. As we generally, the outfalls have to be cleaned once they get beyond very short reach from the shore with hydro excavation to limit marsh impacts. So current staffing, we're basically running two crews at the moment. We're budgeted to run 6 crews. We'd like to be able to run 5 kind of traditional vac truck crews, and 1 is a hydro excavation oriented crew for 6 total crews to hit that projected pipe work. Construction crews, this one's a little bit harder to read in pictograph. Our current staffing is basically doing pipe and catch basin repair work when we have trucks damage catch basins or when pipes see separation failures and have sinkholes or other issues associated with them. Again, we'd like to be doing installation work for improvement projects, as well as trying to rebuild some of these rear yard ditch systems and less maintained swales, ditches, and canals for rehabilitation purposes. Our current staffing, we're showing 1 crew. It's actually down to 2 people at this point in time. So it is technically a crew, but it's a little bit of a sparse one. We're budgeted to have 2 full crews. We'd like to staff it at 2 full crews with a little bit better skill level than our current budgeting would generally call for. The engineering MS4 group, again, we've got a project management group here, MS4, which is our stormwater regulatory program. It's the acronym for it. Floodplain group is here as well. Our capital project managers obviously are in the project management group. That's also where we do our small project allocation, and we do a lot of our outreach activity. We do technically have IDC contracts, and we haven't really been able to use them as effectively the second half of this year because we've been a little bit short on project managers. We'd like to add in outfall permitting as well within this group. The MS4 program, we're running very comfortably at about 9 permit reviews per week for major developments. Unfortunately, the review level this year has been anywhere from 10 to 15 reviews per week. We've actually been stretching the folks doing that work, and they've been keeping up really well this year. It's been pretty impressive, but it's definitely starting to wear them out. And we are a little concerned if we were to lose an employee, that it's taken us generally over a year to hire engineers at this point. So that's obviously a long time to gap fill if you were to lose someone for basically permit review. So we're looking to add a position into that location, which we'll see in a second. Obviously, we have more construction work going on than in general. We've been taking over some of the infrastructure inspection as part of development projects. And then we're trying to get back and doing more asset data collection. As Councilman Appel mentioned, the last real asset inventory of the city was in 1984. The city has changed a little bit since 1984. So we would like to try to make sure we're a little more current than that. Though it is an excellent study in a lot of areas, and Peninsula, some other areas, it is still pretty accurate. But as you get into the West Ashley, James Island, Johns Island, Kanehoy areas, it's obviously not very accurate. Floodplain program, still doing reviews. CRS program, we'd like to add in more grant management to keep working that side of the house and doing a little more outreach and education to kind of get more information out there to homeowners. Like every time we have one of these major storms, hurricanes, people are often surprised where they see flooding or where they should or shouldn't have flood insurance. And I think getting more education out to the community would be really helpful in that aspect. Again, just really briefly here, current staffing, have our outreach coordinator, our AutoCAD technician, and our inspector by the microphone, AutoCAD screen, and hard hat, and then 4 project managers. We're budgeted to have those 3 positions as well as 6 project managers. We would like to have 7 project managers if we're going to add in the IDC and outfall inspection work, outfall cleaning work. The MS4 program is probably the least changes. It's really looking to hire the asset manager position that we're budgeted for but haven't staffed at the moment, and then adding in that one additional plan reviewer and one additional inspector. Floodplain program, again, that's actually just bringing us back to hopefully budgeted levels with a floodplain manager and a floodplain technician. One of the things we have looked at doing is trying to build a progression plan into the department, especially towards the field operations side, where it's often, we talk a lot about how it's hard to compete with private sector for pay rates within kind of construction industry tradescraft right now, that it's an incredibly high demand industry in the Charleston area, which is good to see from a growing city perspective. It is challenging to see from trying to hire those employees into our service fields. One of the things we think we can offer is basically doing in-house skills training and career progression, so that we hire you in at kind of entry-level positions, but we're willing to train you and build you through the career system. And a lot of employers, that's not something that's offered. So it is a real incentive. And basically, we're, instead of having to wait for someone above you to retire or a position to become vacant, if you obtain the skills through testing necessary to move to the next position, you would basically be advanced into that next position to reflect, you getting your CDL license, you learning to drive a backhoe, learning to operate an excavator, et cetera. And that really provides sort of the desire of the city as being like a place to build a whole career again, rather than kind of a stopping point in your journey, hopefully. We also showed some grade adjustments, specifically based on looking at where we have vacancy rates, where we have retention challenges, and then where we have employee attraction challenges. So looking at basically what all this is tracked in our hiring paperwork that HR keeps track of, where you can see how many people have looked at how many people have looked at like a job posting, how many people have then gone to apply for that job posting, like how many people were qualified who applied. So in some of our engineering and construction tradescraft positions, we're at, per every 1,000 people who view the position, we only get 1 or 2 applications, which is less than we would like to be in the area, of course. We'd like to see a little bit better transition than that. I think Ryan Landry's presented on some of those things to the HR committee in the past. I'm happy to discuss those in more detail. So basically, what would the layout cost that we presented in field operations? It increases our current costs about $570,000. That assumes you were to fully staff every position immediately on a full annual basis, which of course is not going to happen. I mean, even if you were to do the changes we're talking about, they're not drastic enough that you'd suddenly fill all your positions. It would take time to hire in. In the engineering MS4 group, about $360,000. That's salary and overhead rate for the city. So all the benefits and things that we provide. We're also, as a department, currently budgeted for $400,000 in salary savings, basically assuming that there will be vacant positions. So if you were, again, to fully staff, you would have to find the money for that salary savings as well. So we end up basically at just over $1 million, again, assuming completely full staffing, which is unlikely. There's some options to pay for that. You could certainly basically, that's similar to what we budget for with IDCs right now. You could say that, we will basically use the IDC budgets to cover that salary work. And then whenever we have vacancies, that money would be used to fund IDC contract work, which is the way we use contracts basically to pay for work you can't get done with your own staff members. You could reduce the number of budgeted staff. We've talked about this, that if you reduce the number of budgeted staff, you would still have a total increase in how many actual staff we have because of how low we are on filled positions. But it's not certainly my preference if we're trying to get to a higher level of service. It would reduce the target level of service, but it would improve the actual level of service. You could upgrade the stormwater utility account. This is something that we've looked at with Wolpert this year. As a consultant, is that our stormwater utility database is quite old, the billing database. It very badly needs to be redone, basically. A lot of the data is very old. A lot of the accounts are likely not paying perhaps what the current charges would be as opposed to some of the newer accounts that have opened. That's just the process of having a heavily developing city over the last 27 years that the stormwater utility accounts have been in existence. And then lastly, you could choose to basically increase the utility fee. This amount of money would come out to about $1 per month per ERU. So there are options. There are certainly other options beyond these. These are just 4 of the more straightforward ones. So I just wanted to at least present this, Councilman Ware. I know you had some questions originally. These are some information ideas. I'm happy to go back through any of the details or talk about it in more precise terms, if that's helpful as well.
Let me start off with the questions. Mr. Fountain, a couple of times you said, getting staff up to, full complement. That's not likely. If you had the money, tell me why that's not likely.
So we budgeted for rates with this approach of what we think would be relatively competitive in the current marketplace.
Okay.
Not necessarily being the highest paying entity in the area, but being relatively competitive. So, to have a relatively competitive group, it will still take time for those positions to draw interest, and you will start to retain more people than you're losing. So you will see it build up and stabilize. But even in a very well-paying, very interesting organization, you still will often see a 5 or 10% turnover rate. So that's more my point, is that it's unlikely that there's just not enough workforce in the Charleston area without jobs currently, that even a competitive rate would just immediately pull people from all the other industries into the city of Charleston. If we were to do that, you'd have to be the highest paying entity in an area, and I'm not sure I can make that work as easily in the budget as I could be in a competitive paying industry.
Well, let me maybe engage that. I understand maybe when it comes to the county, people with bigger budgets, but we're the largest municipality in the state of South Carolina. I don't think we should be chasing Mount Pleasant salaries. I don't think we should be chasing North Charleston salaries. Columbia is a bump below us population wise. Maybe we would be neck and neck, but St. Andrews, PSD, and you start going around, those people ought to be looking to get gainful employment with us. And now that's comparing our salaries to them being 50% more than we being 50% more, 50 cents on the hour more than them. So I kind of think as a mindset, we, in particular, the 13 people who get to vote on this, which would make your jobs a lot easier if we had the revenue there. As I'm thinking on it, Mr. Fountain has come up with a palatable approach. Councilman Shea.
First of all, Councilmember Waring, thanks for bringing this topic up for discussion. And I was out in several neighborhoods right after the storm, and I ran into one of our project managers on an area that Matt and I, and you're familiar with this area, Councilman Waring, because you and I talked about it, and he made the comment, listen, we're doing the best we can, we're down 50%. And I said, I know, I appreciate y'all being out here. So it sounds like, if I'm hearing this correctly from Matt, is that I'd rather have whatever number, 5 more guys, 10 more bodies, and pay them more money than to have 20 positions out there fully budgeted, but I can't get those bodies in here. And that makes perfect sense to me. I mean, we need personnel to do the work. And if we make these tweaks to salaries and income, and maybe whatever else that needs to be done, Matt, if it's something else that people are looking for aside from just basic pay, that's what we need to be addressing as well. I mean, I'm much rather have a smaller workforce better paid than a spread out workforce underpaid, if that makes sense what I'm trying to say. The only thing I would sort of disagree with you, Mr. Chairman, is, and I don't know the answer to this question, quite frankly, is you made a comment, do we need to be chasing other municipalities? I don't know if that's the answer or not. I mean, I'll leave that up for more discussion later, but we've got to be in a competitive market, obviously. What does that market look like? I'm not sure exactly either. And I've raised this before, and I think that that Amy keeps on reminding us about this. It's sort of like this principle of you pushing up. So if you pay or increase the salary of a mid-level staffer, then the people above that position, we need to make the appropriate adjustments as well. Everybody's going to look for those modifications. It's complicated, but as you and Councilmember Gregory made out in our meeting at the last council meeting, we've got to stop coming up with excuses. And we've got to fix this. So I think you got our attention, Mr. Fountain, and any other suggestions. We got to fix it. We got to quit talking about it and just do it. Get this resolved.
Very good points, Councilman. Any commitment, Councilman Bowden?
Sorry, I had to find the unmute. Matt, thank you so much for that presentation. I thought that was very helpful, as Councilmember Waring noted, on pretty short timeline from the last meeting to now to put that together and include pictures. So some of us who aren't inclined towards numbers could understand as well. The number 2 that you had on the last slide there, is that just, I mean, are you essentially just suggesting maybe like some flexibility in how the money that we're already giving you would be helpful, or was that an increase in budget as well?
No, so the first 2 options both were just flexibility within the existing budget. The other 2 options, so one of those was basically flexing how we budget for IDC contracts versus staffing, which is within the internal budget. The second one was basically allowing positions to be vacant or held vacant rather than putting them out for filling if we are short potential salary budgeting money versus what we need in order to pay like a full complement of employees. So that's either, you can either permanently close out positions, or you can basically hold positions as like a frozen position that can't be hired in order to free up the salary money. Those are both revenue neutral from you don't have to generate any revenue. The third option was basically a rework of basically trying to be more efficient in your revenue collections from your existing fees. So no new fees or new increase in fees, just making sure everyone who is paying their actual fee more accurately, something we need to do anyway as we go in and rework the stormwater utility just from age purposes. And the last one was an actual fee increase, which was the only one that had new revenue being generated, true new revenue.
Thank you for that.
And just for clarity, Mr. Chairman, I think I did want to mention is you made a good point of where should we be versus other entities. This was just trying to get us sort of something you could do now, like in an immediate sense, to try to straighten things out a little bit. Like there are many positions in here that don't see any increases that we tried to say, there's still something council will likely do as a COLA or some other approach at the end of the year. This is just sort of immediate actions you could take to try to find ways to start filling those positions.
And thanks. That's what I was asking for. Councilmember Pell, do you have anything? I have one thing to say, and I'm gonna go to Council Lady Park in a second. So the committee.
I think this is a very good discussion, and y'all heard me opine on this in the past, and I appreciate you, Chairman Waring, for bringing this forward, and Matt, of course, thank you for preparing all that excellent information to help visualize the situation we're dealing with. The only thing I would maybe throw out there, and maybe this is a little bit more philosophical, is I think that our goal and we should be driving towards is, the stormwater department for the city of Charleston should be the premier stormwater department in the region. I mean, if you want to be a stormwater engineer, this should be like the pinnacle of the profession, if for no other reason, just due to where we are, the challenges we face, the history of the city of Charleston's relationship with water. We're not the stormwater department for the city of Goose Creek. I'm not taking anything away from them. Everybody's got stormwater issues, but it would be cool, for lack of a better word, to one day sort of have that as the calling card for this department, and we devote the resources necessary to make that happen. That's not just something you can wish and will into existence. You know, if you put all of our departments in the city of Charleston now on a bar graph next to each other, you will not see stormwater as one of the most highly funded and resourced departments in the city. And I just think that over time, you know, as we, you know, begin to, demonstrate our priorities into action, I mean, we need to resource this department accordingly to get the results on the ground that we all need. So I think this is an important discussion. It's not something that's going to be solved immediately. I like the short-term measures that have been proposed today, but we ought to have, I mean, I think we do. I mean, for all intents and purposes, have the premier stormwater department in the region, but that ought to be our calling card. So I don't know if that's helpful, but we'll maybe go from there and see where we can go. Thank you.
It's helpful to know you're on board. But I want to get back to Councilmember Shahid had to say his piece about compensation. He's right. The term you were looking for was compaction, Councilmember Appel, that our human resources, I almost say pushbacks with, it's just the reality of it. I actually believe with some of the immediate suggestions that Mr. Fountain is bringing forward to us, I think we should help the Human Resources Department by hiring an outside labor attorney to look at this, to see whether we could do this in addition to, because some of it I think involves rewriting of a job description to enable him to do that. So, but we need an outside opinion on that one. And certainly that would be one thing I would recommend. Council Lady Parker, you've had your hand up. You're muted.
Yes, thank
Good.
you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey guys, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me speak. I know I'm not on this committee. So
you're welcome, though. You're welcome.
Matt, thank you for the presentation.
Hey.
You said there's a 400,000 in salary savings, and exactly what Councilmember said. Are we able? Can we move forward in, like Councilmember Waring said, rewriting those job descriptions and maybe, utilizing that money? This might be a Ms. Wharton question as well, but can we utilize those funds to contract some of these items out?
So just for clarity, the salary savings is basically money that's already being spent in the budget, assuming that there will be vacancies from the salary position. So what they do is they might say, and these are completely made up numbers for our department, but say you had $5 million of salary and overhead. Let's say $4 million, so the math is easier. $4 million of salary and overhead, you assume you're going to have 10% of your positions be vacant. So they say, well, you're not going to spend $400,000 of that $4 million. So we're going to let you budget that $400,000 into other things within your department, assuming that we won't be paying out your full budgeted salary. So that money is basically money that's already spent in like IDC contracts and small project allocation and other things, the $400,000 that you would basically have to pay back in if you were to fully staff the department, which again is not practical. That's why there are salary savings. And even in a perfect employer, there's vacancies as people leave and you have a gap to rehire. There's always a question of just how high that salary savings number will be.
Okay, thank you. So again, contracting something like this out is not something we want to do. Again, I think Councilmember Waring's, suggestion is more relevant to keeping it within the city, hiring folks within the city and keeping it in-house. But, and I don't know what you think, Councilmember Waring, is that, moving forward with that or contracting it out, and how do we do that?
I think nobody knows this department like Mr. Fountain knows this department. And I want to support that suggestion. I think it's a great first step to try to get some action steps as opposed to kicking the can down the road. The salary savings, as he said, you're always going to have some of that because there's no perfect world out there. I agree with him on that, but the new normal is becoming the salary savings is used to hire private contractors, frankly, at a higher rate to do what we need done, so we don't get as much done if we had qualified people in-house, back to your point, Council Lady Parker. Councilmember Ballard, I see your hand up. You're muted.
Thank you. So how quickly could we get some of these short-term options onto an agenda? Because I wholeheartedly agree with that last statement you said, Mr. Chairman, that nobody understands what the stormwater department needs quite like Mr. Fountain. And I'm, seeing the great work that his department is doing, I'm 100% in favor of giving him the freedom to use the resources we have while we're working on getting him more resources. So, I mean, I understand, these things work in budget years, but I'm just curious how quickly we could act on that. Because I mean, I certainly agree with the urgency that Councilman Parker just expressed, and but I want to do it in a cost-effective way. And I thought Councilmember Seekings raised such a good point at the last meeting when he did just kind of some quick math that if we bid out all these things to private companies, clean every ditch in the city, how much money that would pretty quickly amount to. So my hope is that some flexibility might help in the short term while we're working to get them the resources they need.
I couldn't agree with you more. Mr. Mayor, you've been off screen. I didn't know whether you had any input or not on the discussion.
Well, I appreciate all the comments, and I do agree with Councilmember Appel. We do have the best stormwater division around, and I'm very proud of them. Yeah, we got these challenges, and I've been working both with Matt and with HR to try to bring some new thinking to our recruitment efforts, in addition to what we all know we need to address with our budget next year. So I think Matt's maintenance plan is a, it's unlike anything the city has done over the last 30 years. And it's something we need to do. We have been doing it, but it's taken a little delay, I guess you'd say, with our personnel shortages. So good news is in overall, not just stormwater department, but September, October, we've actually picked up our number of employees for the first time during the year. We haven't had a net loss. We've been picking up some employees. Maybe the job market's getting a little bit better. We're going to address our payroll compensation next year, as we all have been planning on doing. So we just need to stick with it, stick with the good plan, maintenance plan, repair plan that he's got. Do a better job at recruitment, continue to build our benefits package, which is part of our compensation that we'll be looking at for next year. I think we got some improvements coming along the way. But anyway, thank you for all your suggestions. I think they're all very helpful, and let's keep on. And Mr. Chairman, I apologize, and I can stay about 5 more minutes, but I did have another commitment. I'll have to sign off in just a few minutes.
Certainly understand, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do is entertain a motion to take the action steps on Mr. Fountain's suggestion.
I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Any more discussion? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any more discussion on that? Mr. Fountain, again, I really want to thank you to the highest degree, because this was asked on a Tuesday. The storm hit. Well, you walked out there and were preparing for the storm. So, I mean, to be able to come and respond that quick, praises and salutations. Really, you did a great job. All in favor, would you please say aye on the previous question?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody against this? Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Parker, your hand is still up. Do you have a question, Ms. Parker?
I did, and I apologize. I should have asked it earlier, but we were on pay. Didn't want to get off track.
Okay.
The outfall permitting, Mr. Fountain? I know we've had a few discussions, and I know you said there's been a lot of discussion. I don't know if I've been a part of that discussion, but I am curious as far as the outfall permitting goes. I know I have a lot of those issues on James Island. So I hate to go backwards, but I'm just curious what our status is sort of as a package city outfall permit with the Army Corps and DHEC and OCRM and all those entities.
Yeah, so the Army Corps and DHEC actually had a training class that was scheduled for last Monday, which obviously they rescheduled after the hurricane event. So they will have another public outreach kind of engagement educational session, which may be valuable if any council members are interested in attending. I think Councilman Pell's been to one before that the Corps offered, and that can be helpful to kind of see how the process works. We have advanced negotiations with a consultant for a fee to basically do a template design for an outfall project. We're working through finalizing that with them. Then we'll make our submittal. The county is doing the same thing with a similar outfall project. Then we'll report back to y'all on how that template project proceeds and see if we want to progress with the list of pending additional outfall permits that we need moving from that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fountain, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize, your motion was still on the floor. I apologize.
Not a problem. I think we carried it though. I think Madam Clerk, that motion carried.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Mayor.
If I may just add with that, I felt like we had a very good meeting in my office just last week with the Colonel of the U.S. Army Corps and some of his staff and Matt. And I feel like more so than ever, we're on the same page as to a good path forward. Will it be as quick as we all like? We got to follow we do have to get those permits, but they promised us that they would work hand in hand with our staff to try to cut some of the red tape and go to a different approach that would get us these permits in a quicker fashion than what we've been seeing. So we brought it to their attention, and I felt that was a good step.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for all those efforts, because we certainly need them. Down to miscellaneous. Mr. Fountain, I had a couple of things on the FEMA. Since this storm went through, we had a number of people that, as a matter of fact, one reason I was late to Chairman Pell's real estate meeting, I was on with the Neighborhood Association president for East Oak Forest, whose house flooded. Are there any more opportunities for FEMA buyouts since Ian kind of brushed past us that maybe were not available prior to the hurricane?
So they have not gotten yet to the point where they will release any special funding for acquisitions due to the hurricane impact. We are in the middle of a funding round though for the FMA program, which is one of the better grant programs for acquisition. It does require you to have an active national flood insurance policy for your home, because most of the FEMA acquisition grants are really intended to basically reduce costs to the national flood insurance program from repeat payouts. But if anyone has a home where they qualify based on damage that they've had with an active policy, we are certainly willing to talk to them and see if they'd be a good fit for that application, Mr. Chairman. And
hypothetically, if they do fit, I mean, do they have to come up with money? I'm talking about the homeowner to be bought out, or how's that work?
No, so depending on how much damage their home has, there's a sliding scale for what the matching contribution is. In the past, the city has typically paid that matching contribution as out of the drainage fund, basically. One of the reasons FMA is good is it frequently is only like a 10% match rather than more like a 25% match you'd see from an HMGP program. But there are thresholds depending on how much damage they've had and how many times their home has been damaged under the FEMA insurance records.
All right, good. Any other final questions?
Mr. Chairman, just one quick, Mr. Chairman, just briefly, one quick note too. One of the advantages of that program is FEMA does appraise your home. It is at the time of the storm typically, or at the time of the grant application, but it is appraised as if it does not experience flooding. So they don't take like a devaluation from it being a flood prone home. It does frequently take a year or two for the grants to come through, so you don't get continued appreciation in your home between when the application is submitted and when the grant is funded, but it does not like take a deduction for saying that your home has been flood damaged and therefore is not worth as much.
Right, I got that's good to know. Okay, I think we're all in. I think any final questions? Listen, when we get to the meeting tomorrow, I hope to go through the agenda really fast with a mass motion, and then to allow time for Mr. Fountain to give the explanation on his suggestion to us, to the entirety of council. So hopefully the first part will go by in like 2 minutes, and then the balance of my meeting, I'd like to have Mr. Fountain remain the council and have the same benefit we just experienced with his recommendation. Ms. Parker?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And for that reason, I'd like to ask this question, if it's okay.
Sure.
For the data, I've been pointing a lot of citizens, especially after Ian, to our flood page. I think we posted it on their Facebook page as well. I'm just curious if you could possibly share that data maybe at an upcoming meeting. And I don't know how the city collects that data, but it may be I know it is important for me to know, because I've asked, I know Mr. Waring asked for a list of homes, but I know that a lot of citizens, I point them in the direction of our website at whether it's ditch maintenance or storm drains, whatever it might be, but also the most recent flood page. I apologize. I think you know what I'm talking about, right? Like, was your home impacted by flood? Is everyone aware of that website?
Right.
Okay.
Right. I got a mailing or something last week in the mail from the city. I think a lot of us did. Right. Yeah. No, I just saw that today, but either way, I was just wondering if you can share that data with us, I'm sure that's something that I can just reach out maybe to Brian with, or you, but I'm just curious if anyone else is, how can we see that data that's being submitted?
So we could certainly look at doing a report out when we've completed the damage assessment on the general information that we found from damage assessment in the city from the storm. If that's what you're looking for, Councilmember, like which roughly how many homes were damaged or where we saw damage issues.
Yes, and not just damage, but as far as those maintenance requests or ditch cleanings and things like that, we're getting it on the city website, obviously for data purposes. Can we share that, whether you share it with me via email committee? I'm just curious about the data.
Yes, we can look at that. Mr. Sheehan can normally produce how many citizen requests we've had in different categories under the GovQA program in different months. That's a relatively straightforward pathway. We mostly collect those. The way the program's set up is for creation of work orders out of them and then tracking those work orders, rather than it wasn't originally set up as a way to like track how much interest is there, how many requests are there, but we've done a little bit of that, especially for environmental services in the past, to show where our collection numbers are, and we can present some of that to you as well. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, and one last thing for the next agenda, next month agenda, next 2 weeks agenda, Mr. Fountain. I want to get a presentation. I'll reach out to CWS on, again, the dollars that are behind and the collection of stormwater fees, in particular people who are just not paying. This has been how long you been with the city now, Mr. Fountain? About 3 years?
About 3.5 years, Mr. Chairman.
3.5 years. This was subject before you were hired, okay? And we all know after 3 years or so, Mr. Appel, we can't go against those bad debtors. So we're losing money. So Ms. Wharton, maybe in the next 2 weeks, I know we was Wolpert, a consultant, looking at it to suggest adding it to the hopefully property tax bill, but there's going to be a bridging I think we need, because we now collect the monies, and correct me if I'm wrong, basically 1/12 monthly. So if we go to an annual payment when people pay it on their property taxes, we got to find a way to bridge that until the next property tax collection. I doubt that we'd be able to put it on this year's property tax. I don't know how that works out, but Ms. Wharton, can you touch bases on that? Because we need to get that money. 1/12 isn't working, and the reality is CWS no longer wants to be in the business of collecting our stormwater fees. So
It would be too late to do that, Councilmember Waring, on 2022's tax bills for sure.
Okay,
So we'd have to work towards 2023, but Matt, there's a lot that we need to do with this in terms of figuring out basically a whole new system, correct, Matt? So there's a lot of
That's
work
correct.
that we need to do, which I guess if we were to bring something to council to talk about all of this, Matt, we'd kind of go through all of that.
Yeah, that's correct. We would
and
have, we'd have to rebuild basically every account in the system, which is, basically an account for every property in the city. So it's a significant amount of work. I think it's worth doing, but it is a significant amount of work.
Definitely worth doing. It's just a lot of work to do, and how we just need a plan on how we go about doing that, and then figuring out the billing side of it, like we talked about. So, and maybe Wilbert could help us with that in terms of cash flow, in terms of how we can do that. If we bill, I don't know, if we bill for half of a year monthly, and then the rest of the year it comes through, and we do like a half a year. If the tax bills, I'm not sure yet. That's like all things that we need to work out so that we don't mess up our cash flow for projects and things like that.
I understand, but isn't North Charleston, Mount Pleasant doing it now?
They've been doing it, I think, for a very long time.
I wonder if anybody's around to see how they transition from.
I don't know. I know Warren Newton just got to retire from the North Charleston. Very jealous. Just kidding.
Anyway, but my point is, I don't want to get to this point next year and council hadn't been put forth with the question of voting to put it on the property tax bill. Because we just need the revenues out there. We just need the revenue. We've approved. We just got people out there that's saying, I'm not going to pay. And we got to find a way to collect that money. They enjoy the stormwater improvements that we make. It's unfair for them not to pay their fair share.
Well, luckily we now have this report from Wilbert that will help us get started.
Okay, great.
So,
all right.
2 weeks.
Well, I just want to be able to put the question on in front of council to move towards having the stormwater fee added to our property tax bills. Now, if that's going to be the 23 property tax bills, that gives us a year basically to work this out. But we had a similar conversation last year, and we are where we are. We had a similar conversation before that. So again, at the end of the day, we got to take some action steps. Mr. Fountain's not going to have the money to hire the people on a problem that's every year costing more to do.
And I promise I'm not trying to push this off, but perhaps a good time to talk about it might be when we present the stormwater budget for 2023, where we can have a bigger conversation about all of that.
That's good. And we're going to present that when? In November?
Usually that goes in December, but we'll talk about it in ad hoc first.
Okay, the key thing is, again, before 12/31, I want all 13 members to be able to say, I'm for this or I'm against this. But I know kicking the can down the road on the issue doesn't make sense when we just don't we got revenue out there. Some of it is low hanging fruit, and we didn't take the action step to collect.
We also have a full council workshop when we present the draft budget. So we could present the stormwater draft budget and the general fund enterprise fund budget at the same time and have that conversation in a full council workshop as well. And then bring it in December for approval.
Whatever the recommendation is by you and Mr. Fountain, I'm willing to follow that leadership.
Let us talk it out and then we'll let you know.
Good deal. All right.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. With that, by acclamation.